We've all seen it. Movies like Selfless, Upload, and Transcendence, where a character transfers their consciousness into another body or into a machine to achieve immortality. We as a human species have managed to overcome the very challenges of physics, from escaping Earth's atmosphere to explore the unknown depths of space, to building large telescopes to see planets far, far away, even building particle accelerators to study the quantum world by smashing subatomic particles together. Yet our minds are trapped in a box of, well, meat. We humans, as intelligent and adaptive as we are, have limitations. We as a society are trapped by our lifespan in our mortal machines. Each and every one of us, our loved ones, our friends, and even the people we despise will eventually leave this rare planet. So is it possible to transfer our consciousness into a machine so that we can spend more time on this planet? Or transfer our consciousness into a digital world to achieve digital immortality? Could there be a time where the need for an organic brain to have thoughts, consciousness, and life become obsolete? With the surge in innovation and rapid progress in science and technology, for the very first time, the idea of leaving our boxes of flesh behind and uploading our minds into a digital utopia seems possible. Mind uploading and digital immortality is an ongoing investigation to find out if we could at some point in the future live in a world free from the constraints of limited lifespan and eventual death. So let's dive deeper into this idea of digital immortality. So what are we uploading exactly? The mind is one of those things that's really hard to describe. We think it is this collective place that holds our thoughts, consciousness, and intelligence. That thing that allows us to imagine, dream, think, and recognize. Mind uploading is this hypothetical concept of making an exact digital copy or a process of emulating our own entire brain to capture the full complexity of our own mental state so that down the line it can be transferred into a digital computer. But for this digital computer to be able to fully capture the complexity of the human mind, you would need a computer to run simulations using information from brain processing so that it can simulate your consciousness. The idea of mind uploading makes three assumptions. The first assumption is that our mind and consciousness arise from the physical structure and the biochemistry of exactly what is happening in the neurons of our brain. The idea that everything relating to the mind and consciousness being found in the biochemistry of our brain is called physicalism. This keeps the discussion of mind uploading within the domains of the natural law of our world. The discussion around physicalism and our mind means that the computations underlying the biochemistry of consciousness could take place in physical places other than our biological neurons, so long as we are able to map these computations occurring within the brain. Assumption 2 is that our minds must be scannable. At some point down the line in the future, we will understand our brain and how it works well enough and have significant advancements in technology that can mimic all aspects of our brain, from neuroplasticity to consciousness, to literally create a digital copy of our own minds. Assumption 3 is that our minds must be computable, meaning that computer softwares can host our minds, even if it takes a lot of code. The idea assumes that there is no physical property of our brain, including consciousness, that cannot be simulated by a computer software. With the rise in artificial intelligence and in machine learning, the idea of uploading our mind into a digital world becomes more possible. All ideas and assumptions have been proposed by scientists and philosophers, and the idea of mind uploading is still in hot debate. With so many fundamental questions unanswered, it's hard to know who's right and whether this is an ethical approach. Regardless of your position on the idea of mind uploading, whether it is possible or not, it must all begin with an understanding of how the brain actually works. The human brain is the most complicated and complex biological structure known to man. So let's take a deeper look into it. Our brain is made up of approximately 86 billion neurons, each of them communicating with one another through a million billion neuronal connections, each capable of sending thousands of signals every single second. That's about a quadrillion signals every single second of our waking lives. And that's crazy to think about. And it's not just neuronal cells. Our brain has close to 85 billion other cells, like immune cells, each playing a different job to keep our brain safe, protected, and functional. On a macro level, our brain can be separated into different sections with different jobs, from controlling our breathing and heartbeat to coordinating movements and involuntary reflexes. The neocortex, or the outermost layer of our brain, is the most developed, holding our memories and allows us to think, plan, dream, hope, and imagine. It is this area that allows us to have higher cognitive function and self-awareness. But we still don't know where the you part is. We know that areas of the brain like the precuneus cortex have the most significant influence on our consciousness, being involved in our self-awareness and our self-processing. In other words, our ability to think about ourselves and reflect on our own personal experiences. But we also know that other areas of the brain share tasks and work together that no one part can do alone. Even the building blocks that make up our neurons are complex. Neurons aren't just wires that change and process information within our brain. Synapses, where these signals are sent from one neuron to the other, are also complicated, containing hundreds of different receptors for hundreds of different chemical signals, which opens them up to external influences. Our understanding of neurons and how they work has significantly advanced over the past years, yet there is still so much more we can learn about them. Our current understanding of neurons and how they work is still pretty basic, and we can predict how they will react and behave with a small degree of accuracy. But there is still so much more about the brain than just neural signals. Hormones also play a big role, such as oxytocin, which helps with social bonding, trust, and connection between baby and her mother, or serotonin, which affects our mood. Our brain is also influenced by other parts of our body, such as our heart nerves and bacteria living inside our gut. In a digital body or world, without any of these, our emotional experiences would change. So if we want to experience all these feelings that we have in the real world, we would have to simulate all of them. Otherwise, we would just become emotionless automatons. What seems like a complex system to begin with becomes even more complex as we continue to learn about the brain, what external influences there are, and how they affect how our brain works. To be able to get this insanely complex interconnected blobs of meat, cells, and chemicals into a computer, we need a model that can simulate our brain in all of its complexity. A kind of scan. Unfortunately, our current technology for scanning, such as fMRI, aren't good enough. But there is a new method that's emerging and looks quite promising and may make this very idea of mind uploading a possibility. We could grab a brain and cut it into very thin slices. Each slice will be imaged using high-resolution electron microscopes. These images will then be stacked on top of each other to obtain a three-dimensional reconstruction of the brain in the digital form. This is exactly what scientists have successfully accomplished. In the previous years, these scientists were able to fully map a whole cubic millimeter of a mouse brain, which is equivalent to the size of a large grain of sand. This is extremely small, yet this cubic millimeter of mouse brain contained 200,000 brain cells, 75,000 neurons, and over 500 million synapses. This was a 5-year project called the Machine Intelligence from Cortical Networks program, in which the grain of brain was sliced into 27,000 equally sized thin slices with a total of 150 million images taken and captured using customized electron microscopes. So if we wanted to map and scan the entire human brain, we would have to repeat this process about over 1 million times, which is a lot harder when we consider that we may have to simulate all the billions of underlying proteins and underlying molecules that keep our neurons functioning and our brain working. The only problem with this method is that it's quite invasive in that you kinda have to be, well, dead. So let's say we manage to map and fully scan the entire human brain. The real question is, how do we turn this static blueprint of the brain into this active digital form? Even if we did have the technology to do so, we would need to simulate the electrodynamics and chemical interaction and changes that occur in response to visual cues, emotions, and experiences so that it becomes this fully active digital brain. In this way, the digital brain, like the organic brain, can evolve over time and process information so that we can think, hear, see, smell, and act. Scientists have spent an immense amount of time trying to simulate the brain and behavior of smaller organisms. The Open Worm project is an international open science project aimed at simulating and mimicking the brain and behavior of the roundworm Cynohyditis elegans. In this project, scientists managed to map the worm's entire 302 neurons and successfully simulated the worm's brain and behavior into a computer software, which was then uploaded into a Lego robot. The virtual or digital brain was able to move the robot forward and back, similar to how a C. elegans would move. Here we can see the robot moving towards the wall, stopping before it hits the wall, and then turning around and reversing. Now this may not seem extraordinary, but we gotta remember that this entire process is controlled by a simulated digital brain. It may not be the most exact and accurate model of a human brain, but the fact that this robot can move simply from a simulated brain of less than 400 neurons is a pretty incredible step towards the idea of mind uploading. Speaking of which, there have been other major projects aimed towards advancing our understanding of how the brain works and how we can simulate it into a digital body or a digital world. The Blue Brain project, launched in 2005, aimed at creating a biologically detailed digital reconstruction and simulation of the mammalian brain to help identify the fundamental principles that underlie the brain function and the brain structure using supercomputers. The Blue Brain project has made huge leaps in brain simulation, from creating an algorithm that is capable of predicting the neural mapping of neural microcircuits to the very first digital reconstruction of the brain's power source known as the neural glia vascular architecture. Their most recent milestone, achieved just last year in 2022, was to create a method that would allow us to predict the composition of a mouse brain from a bunch of different data sets. This may be the biggest advancement towards creating technologies that can predict how the brain functions as a fully dynamic system. Maybe even allow us to create an algorithm that can predict how the brain will function in its digital form. However, we just don't know if this can be achieved with a human brain. Whether or not our technologies now or in the future can simulate a human brain with a real conscious and in mind. The difficulty lies within the nature of the problem. Is the brain too complex for us to fully understand? Or is it too complex for us to even solve? And even if we had a detailed understanding of how the brain works, we would probably need a much stronger supercomputer or even a quantum computer to achieve such a feat. But right now, we have pretty good concrete scientific results and a great starting point. However, the path to true brain simulation still remains unclear, and there is still a lot more innovation and research to be done. But the path to mind uploading is still worth pursuing. We may not need to simulate every single cell down to the atomic level. Instead, we could create and develop models that use probability to predict how the brain would behave in certain circumstances. With the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning, this idea may even be possible. A successful mind upload would be functional digital immortality. We will continue to exist in this digital form or digital world so long as there is a copy of ourselves stored somewhere and as long as it's not damaged or deleted. Like a computer, if this copy of ourselves did become damaged and corrupted, it would experience a whole host of problems: crippling anxiety, a world of paranoia, or immense pain. But let's assume that this copy of ourselves did remain undamaged and uncorrupted. Will life in digital form be the same as the organic form? Will our perception of life change knowing that death is not the end? Or maybe instead of uploading our minds into a digital utopia, we would upload it into a robotic software and place it into a machine so that we can still enjoy this very earth that we live on, fall in love, make friends, lose friends, and enjoy the work we do to advance human development, but make these mortal bodies that we have obsolete. Whichever direction we go, we may be the first species to reach true immortality, or at least digital immortality. Only time will tell how far we can go. Thank you for sticking until the very end of the video. I hope you found this video informative and have learned where we are at towards digital immortality. Don't forget to leave your comments and ideas and thoughts on this idea of mind uploading down in the comment section below, and let us know if you would participate in uploading your own minds to a digital utopia or into a robotic body. Feel free to hit the subscribe button to show us your support, and as always, we are those who wonder. Keep wondering and keep learning.